Thanks, Alan, and thank you for all the attendees of PancakesCon and to the organizers and volunteers. It takes a lot to take this on, so many mad respects. So yeah, this is the challenges of manufacturing IoT devices and evolving from Cyberpunk to Solarpunk, and some guidance on how to make that happen. Start off with who am I? I'm Michael Goetzman. I was born, raised, reside, and plan to die, hopefully of old age, in the state of Wisconsin. I used to work for Masterlock as their CISO. So yes, the shitty lock company that our industry loves to pick. It was really exciting to be there. The company also owns Sentry Safes, so safe cracking. And I advised on IoT devices for smart home products like Moen faucets. And they're known for, smart faucets, sump pump monitoring, shut off, leak detection, stuff like that. I was also the head of security for the Americas for Cushman and Wakefield, advising on smart city, pushing for more efficient and smart urban centers. Today, I work for large financials and healthcare organizations trying to provide social good for society. Lastly, I'm probably known best for running CypherCon. It's Wisconsin's hacker conference that happens to be next week. So if you want an excuse to come to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, look it up. So manufacturers face several challenges when creating IoT devices. Start off with the hardware, right? PCBs. You have to create them small. You have to make them power efficient. They have to communicate with other devices, usually wirelessly. They're printed on printed circuit boards. It's a non-conductive material with defined tracks or paths of conductive material that interconnects various components. Now, as you can imagine, there's a lot of safety and design concerns of interference with other devices. You don't want a sensor for a nuclear power plant getting disrupted or high vibrations, in a mining operation, right? Next is battery life. Now, this one's always challenging. The effectiveness of the product kind of relies on low power consumption and how long the battery lasts. An example of that is my digital doorknob to get into my house, right? If that didn't last more than a couple months, I'd probably go back to the standard mechanical doorknob. Device aesthetics. Now, a lot of people don't consider this like critical, like the shape, the size, the color, the weight. In a future slide, I'm going to talk about how bad aesthetics created just a huge headache for an organization. So stay tuned for that fun one. Bugs, right? Hardware bugs. If you roll out 1 million devices and you find out you have a critical hardware bug, what do? Can you resolve it remotely with software updates? Or is there a design fault that's going to ruin the operations and cause a recall, right? So forgetting things like, a capacitor to balance out power consumption could cause major problems. So obsolete components. Now, this one's the hardest one, especially post-pandemic. Components are getting harder and harder to find. The main advantage of designing with older components is you understand its physical behaviors, and things are well known. The disadvantages of that is the longer these devices are out there, the more vulnerabilities are discovered. So researchers are constantly focusing on products that could bite you, right? And then, as I mentioned, supply chains are a nightmare. Imagine rolling out 10,000 of one device, and then you got to change your parts, and you roll out 100,000 of those devices. Like, how do you keep track of who has what, and keeping up with all the updates and potential vulnerabilities, right? Lastly, cost. it's IoT devices are extremely expensive to manufacture. It limits adoption in the marketplace, and trying to maintain what you deliver on over a period of time can get disturbing. So I said lastly on costs, regulatory compliance, it goes along with that cost, right? Once you have something out there, it continues and continues, and regulatory compliance shifts. So what you might have calculated is $100,000 for maintaining compliance, the next year is maybe $250,000. Right? It gets difficult fast. So let's jump into the risks. People safety, life above all, right? Anybody with CISSP, that was drilled into their brain, right? And then they somehow found questions in their testing that made you say, like, well, maybe, right? Like we could potentially have a small risk to sacrifice somebody. So you mark off C, right? Equipment safety, right? So I talked about the aesthetics. Samsung suffered with their Galaxy Note. It was a design flaw. They didn't build the device so the battery could expand in temperature shifts, causing them to explode. So, make the device just a slightly bigger so things don't blow up and cause environmental and equipment failure, right? Information security risk, right? So the majority of us watching are information security professionals. I think we understand what that could cause. I'll skip that one. You know the answer to that one. Data privacy and management, right? So it's weird what things capture. Data points and sensors are capturing all this data. What are they doing with it? Probably trying to sell you more crap, right? Ultimately, but there's a lot of stuff that could be abused, GPS locations and etc. This is stuff that manufacturers need to think about and properly plan for. Now, IoT devices alone aren't as useful or effective, right? So IoT devices need to connect either directly or indirectly to the internet, making them vulnerable to exploits, monitoring, and other security threats. But that also, there's benefits to that, right? You have your toaster talking to your fridge, right? Manufacturers must design these devices with built-in security features, but again, time is evil. Like time, eventually that toaster is going to get compromised and then take out your fridge, right? Or and then maybe both of them will be used as nodes to attack innocent hospital systems or something, right? So manufacturers have to be very careful that their whole rollout of products don't become compromised and all used to attack another target. There's a lack of standards in the industry that the interconnectivity between devices is making it a struggle for manufacturers. So vulnerabilities. Luckily, most vulnerabilities are software related, and eventually products in most cases have the ability to get updates once they connect out to the host, right? It's what do you do with those devices that never want to connect home and they're sitting out there with potential other issues, right? So I say this like a broken record, but time is a bad ally, right? If a device hasn't connected for a year and then eventually connects, how quick does a script or a bot compromise that device? And when it is a hardware issue, the only solution is to replace the component or send software updates to like bypass the component, right? Like all vulnerabilities, the manufacturer's focus should be to prioritize vulnerabilities, remediate, and then verify. Same with typical enterprise vulnerabilities. So what I think is the most difficult challenge for manufacturers is just the culture of security. Beyond just the security team, the developers need to code in a secure way. Leadership needs to understand how to properly guide and invest in remediations and calculate risks and probabilities. What I did at former organizations is I brought them to cons, right? Like legit brought developers who had no interest in cybersecurity, brought them to some of the larger cons and let them just have fun, right? Like this is not a work thing. This is like individual, go have fun and see what the rest of us are feeling and get them involved, right? By making it fun, it makes them think in their day-to-day job, even subconsciously, hey, like maybe we should think about this, right? And then the biggest challenge, and I'm still working on how to overcome this, is profits and longevity of your boss over security. When you come in and say like, hey, like we need to cancel this rollout of a product, they're going to be like, no. And like your job depends on it, your boss's job depends on it. You have to find another way. You start costing the organization too much money, they'll just replace you and find somebody that'll just sign the dotted line, right? So this is all doom and gloom. Work in cybersecurity, it's like, that's my job. So let me provide some solutions, right? There is no cookie cutter method for all this. So please use this as like general guidance. Hardware, hire passionate people, hire people that genuinely like to dive into the details and make PCB boards that are beautiful. And it's a piece of art and there's deep understanding. Design and remove those bad features from the beginning. It makes a lot less headache in the future. Spend that extra time and then decide on the life cycle, right? Like how long is this product likely going to be feasible? So smart city and smart home, for example, you're going to put these products embedded into the foundation of homes and skyscrapers. Can you realistically think that these products are going to last 100 years like the skyscraper might? So risks, do your QA. Quality is everything. If you have a padlock, for example, how many times can you open and close that shackle before it breaks? How much can that battery be exposed to sun, right? Run scenarios, run stress tests, like, you know, take your product and slam it with a sledgehammer and a crowbar, like test things, right? Like you never know what's going to happen in the real world when you start rolling out in mass quantities. And then comms, right? Make sure you can update these devices, or if they can't be updated, they have timeouts and disables, if possible, right? Like you don't want something disabling that's like on a hydro dam and then suddenly there's flooding, right? So you have to be smart about the products you roll out and what they're doing. Now, vulnerabilities, so stay up to date with the industry, right? Do your updates, phase products out when they're struggling. Like it's going to cost the organization money and there's risk, right? So get ahead of that. Politics, there should be some balance of power, right? If you're reporting into somebody that's got a conflict of interest, that's common in our industry of like, you know, the security officer reporting into the information officer. And when you're critiquing the system, you're critiquing their baby, right? It's the same thing. It's there needs to be some third party oversight. And I don't, you know, I hope we catch up as a society to be able to monitor that before what they refer to as a digital Pearl Harbor could potentially hurt people, right? So overall, I think the community needs IT security product labels. And just like nutrition on a bar, a power bar, an energy bar, what's this doing to you, society, your business, and who's validated that it's doing what it's supposed to do? So if you're able to see my screen, some of the products that we worked on are like retail boxes. They went from single device, like an iOS or Android device, to a single product. And eventually we turned it into multiple devices for multiple products. So if you're a realtor, a seller agent, you could pass access to get into a key to a home to 10 buyer agents and see the timestamps of when the key opened and when the key closed, for example. So changing the mentality of one device to one product to multiple devices to multiple products changes the scaling and scope of like every piece in between IoT. So that concludes the IoT manufacturing, really high level. I didn't dive into details. Hopefully I got your minds thinking. Alan, are there any questions?
Not really questions as such, but there was quite a bit of discussion about how understanding other industries is important to security, and how badly the communication is between the two different industries. You know, the kind of manufacturing industry versus the versus our kind of almost information kind of focused industry. I know personally, I'll take a couple of minutes off your time. I did some work on IoT, and you know, when you put a website together, you always do like a kind of SSL Labs type thing, and you try and get all the latest and greatest encryption that you can possibly get, because why wouldn't you? You just might as well do that. Whereas when you're designing with these little kind of devices, you know, you can do the difference between two different encryption things might be the difference between, you know, which kind of battery you're going to use or how long that battery lasts or something. You don't really consider these things until you realize, okay, well, actually, maybe we can go with a slightly worse encryption algorithm if we can get more battery out of it, which is fascinating to me.
You know, so encryption comes down to how much power you have, right? Like how much compute you have. And it gets frightening really quick, right? You start looking at really standard methods out in society and you realize, oh, there's some critical stuff going on here. Like maybe we have to pivot to different options and different ideas. And encryption's always one of those ones that, you know, you start talking about like Bluetooth low energy, for example. It's like, okay, now what do we do, right?
Yeah, and sometimes you don't even need to encrypt the stuff that's going through these devices. You just do it because you think that you should, but like then it's like, well, you know, do people really care? Is this information that people can actually use? So,
yeah, and sometimes you might think, you might calculate, oh no, people are not going to care about this, and then suddenly you find out a attack scenario or that data leaks out and people are like, no, like I actually was kind of concerned about that and now I don't respect your organization whatsoever. So it's very frightening, right?
yeah. Yeah, so that's hang on, a question did come through. What do you think of DIY IoT initiatives, like reusing digital watches or building new boards, etc.? So I guess taking pieces that were designed for something different and then changing them to something that they were not intended for.
Yeah, I mean, so if we're using IoT devices for something that weren't intended for, from an individual consumer side of things, like that's awesome. Like hackers overcome limitations and play around with things, right? From a manufacturer side of the house, like that's dangerous, right? Don't throw your name on something that's just like whipped together. Put a lot of thought and design into it and make sure it was intended for what you're selling it for.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think that's it for now. So
Excellent.
yeah, if any more come through, I will let you know. But yeah, let's jump into part 2.
Perfect. So now I feel like these topics are similar, right? IoT devices and then evolving from Cyberpunk to Solarpunk. So an actionable guide from a hacker for hope for the future. So society has a lot of challenges. Like we see these struggles, supply chains, train derailments poisoning our lands, territory disputes, power and grid issues from weather, dirty fuels, petrocapitalism. Like we get guilt, shame, anger. Like, are we approaching extinction? Right? Um, is it all trending towards these mega corporations ruling with these full integrations of technology into society and like embedded into our brains and self, right? Is there a fashion trend? Like here I am in a black hoodie. Like, should we be in more like, optimistic, colorful, like a Hawaiian shirt, right? That's more my style when the camera's off, let's be honest. How do we fight these oppressors, right? That's very cyberpunk. Like let's fight these futuristic evil corporations. Like, where do we fit in as hackers? Like, ultimately, what does this mean for us? And what might our descendants 7 generations from now look back and say, like, I wish they did this today. Let's rewire our actions and expectations and come up with new kind of engagements, right? So for the future generation's sake, we want the hackers to inspire hope, desire for betterment, creativity, joy. Like, so in Solarpunk, the name itself, it's like the warmth you feel when that radiant sunlight hits you. Orientating ourselves towards these bright spots in the world, we need radical hope and radical reassessment. We must attempt to rescue our future when times are good, right? This is like a cyclical thing. If society and corporations and evil governments that are overbearing on you, you shift towards a cyberpunk activist mentality. But when times are good and things are going well, like, start overcoming limitations in other ways to save our destiny and safeguard our future, right? Let's seed and cultivate joy using our technology. So obviously I've been thinking about this lots lately, and like I'm thinking, like, look at all this tech. Like, let's take it step back and step back and step back. And I came to like the energy itself and the electron. And I came to the conclusion that cyberpunk should die. Like, cyberpunk is a dead culture. And we need to be alert to the fact that we might have it wrong. Like, and because we probably do have it wrong. And don't worry, it's okay. Like, even the dark ages had culture and everybody moved on. So let's be honest, like, cyberpunks never had a chance. Like, the movement started in the 80s and was about surviving the Cold War. Like, this crazy technology with, a mix of mechanical and digital. It's this weird, cool phase. And it's just like this burnt out cyclical views of like Generation X. No wonder everybody's stressed out. The cyberpunk future vision doesn't seem like a fun place for where I want to be. It's like gritty, like dangerous rogue vibes. Like, it's cool to role play that, but when I look around my real life, that's not who I want to be, right? So cyberpunk has run its course and we need to evolve. Life must go on, and let's push cyberpunk into the shadows of our old ways. So we don't need to completely start fresh, right? We can still embrace that countercultural identity that we all love. We can keep our outfits, put your hoodies back on, use that critical thinking and the methods we learned from our cyberpunk elders. We don't need to stop using our ingenuity. We can keep our independence. We can keep fighting for freedoms. We can have concerns of social inequalities, and we can rebel against social political forces to fight for betterment. We will continue to fight against these evil corporations, these overzealous governments, and we will eat the rich that are purposely exploiting others. Instead of hiding in a hole, suckling on the teat of evil corporations, we hope to have a fresh, new approach and a new strategy. And we're welcoming Solarpunk. It's not necessarily anti-wealth, It's post-capitalism in its purest form. Our cores haven't changed. However, the future needs our proactive actions. We need to charge forward and begin creating the life and future we want. We need to harness and actualize these futuristic technologies and advanced humanity with a core Solarpunk concept of interconnectivity of technology, nature, and community, like PancakesCon. That is Solarpunk to me, maybe to you. Solarpunk is a movement, and it's a emerging movement of today. It's guiding us towards the future with genuine, grounded hope. So Solarpunk started as a literary, imaginative, artistic, and aesthetic movement. The philosophies around beauty and hope, right? To me, Solarpunk moves beyond like a subgenre and is a realistic movement that we can all live by. It's the merger of humanity, technology, and nature itself. An amazing alternative to Solarpunk fiction is one that encourages optimism and foreknowledge of where the present should be guided towards and where the future should ultimately end up. The present's imperfect. Solarpunk offers a clear-eyed hope. I don't want an apocalyptic nightmare. We don't want gory fantasy. We want to see something beyond like the everyday media. So that tenet of hope in the cyberpunk movement is what really draws me to this path. Now, solar and solarpunk doesn't necessarily mean throw solar panels on your home, right? The movement is much more exclusive. It isn't as exclusive to solar energy. The movement is bigger than energy justice alone. The movement is about building a place, a world that you'd be proud of passing on. Solarpunk is about action, where we want humanity to succeed, succeeding together beyond corporate control, beyond dishonest political motives, and living in unison with nature while embracing our technologies. Although solarpunk is frequently depicted as this lush, vibrant wildlife intermixed with dense urban living, at the core of it, it's about values of sustainability, decentralization, and the freedom of making your own choices and creating your own foods and having technology help you, just like IoT devices. Nature is not just uniform, and neither should the solarpunk movement. Mold it into what makes sense for you. Solarpunk isn't just about living in a euphoria. It's about pushing radical change, and that's not easy. So start building and striving for what makes sense for you. It's literally the journey from where we are today for what we can strive for and reaching towards what we've dreamed about. We need to safeguard our future. We need to embrace a long-term mentality instead of the short-term wastefulness. The idea that we can do things today that theoretically help people in the future. We want a society built not on scarcity and hierarchies, but abundance and equality. So to me, the choice is clear. Like, I don't want to identify as like a cyberpunk anymore unless I really have to fight, like go to war, right? Like, so is it solarpunk or barbarianism? It will require a new set of techniques, new infrastructure, new architectures, technologies that already exist that we could utilize for that new mentality. And I think hackers can lead the future. So the title of this talk was Actionable Things a Hacker Can Do. You want to decentralize things. Like literally, we're seeing different states' grids go down, right? California, Texas, New York, like Wisconsin, where I'm from. is one of the highest risks on all 50 states that potentially could go down. So do we have the means to be able to start decentralizing that power so when one part of the grid goes down, the rest stays up? And it comes down to financials. Like, I'm not going to lie to you, like, but the economics of scale can start shifting in our favor, right? And start thinking about what that means. Defy today's energy systems, right? Like coal and I think the movie There Will Be Blood, where they're like the guy standing in front of like these dirty like old mentalities, and that was like macho, right? Like, no, that's not macho. Like, wear the light color Hawaiian shirts and throw solar panels with cool batteries on your home. That I find more macho than the gritty times of 100 years ago. So realizing alternative forms of infrastructure, building things with upgraded materials and sustainability, uniting together, working together is what will make this at a mass scale, right? So if you're manufacturing IoT devices, for example, think of ideas of how just a tiny minuscule change can affect scaling across society significantly. Use technologies to support well-being, connected devices for biohacking, data, knowledge, like seriously, like as basic as just going to the doctor so you know things are okay. So you can, if you're not here, you can't help elevate society, right? Use technologies as hackers to overcome challenges, right? Like one thing that I find really exciting is individuals out there are jailbreaking devices, which was one of the questions, like, should we be using devices in their unintended ways? Well, if the organization is locking you down and forcing you to do it their way, that's too expensive, jailbreak the stuff. Find it in your way. That's why we're here as hackers, is to go outside that gray area. You own that device. Should you own what you're capable of doing with that device? Look into light pollution. There's efficiencies to be made there. Like, I live in a dark neighborhood. I prefer that. Like, can you get used to that too? And then there's a battery powered tractor that excited me at the Wisconsin Energy Fair. It's like, wow, like that sounds so much cleaner, of like working in like an acre large garden or a whole field of energy produced things instead of fumes, right? Like, when I think of organic gardening, I don't know if I really want some of this fake stuff in there, right? So that is my talk on Cyberpunk is dead. Solarpunk is the future. I hope you ponder what that means for your life. Thank you. Alan, any questions on Solarpunk?
No, there weren't any questions, but there was a lot of positivity. I think a lot of people have been inspired by this talk. And yeah, it's very exciting. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about it. There was a lot of excitement about it. So it sounds like you're onto something that people are interested in. So hopefully we'll see more of this.
Awesome. Like, an example of a product that I use in my life is it's called Sense. And you clip two little devices over your main power intake to your home.
Mhm.
Starts using algorithms to find out what's using what power within your home, right? Then you can buy these little smart plugs and you can plug in your computer into it, and it tells you precisely how much power that your computer is using and how much it eats up in a day, a month, a year. And it gives you some ideas of like, okay, like an example is I have two different freezers. One's like a deep chest freezer and the other one's has like a glass top on it, almost like you'd find at a convenience store.
Mhm.
And I'm like, wow, like the glass top was 3 times as much power consumption than like a deep chest freezer, right? So I ended up buying like and they're like 20 bucks a piece or less, like 10, I think they on sale, 10 bucks a piece. I went around and like everything that's drawing power in my house, I'm plugging them into the wall and I'm plugging devices into them. And I have like one collective like display of everything that's using power in my house.
Okay.
So I'm climbing into bed and I like open up my app and I'm like, oh, like I forgot this device on and I forgot that device on. And it's costing me like 15 cents an hour sleeping. So I like, I remote like killed some of those devices and I got it down to like 4 cents an hour. And I'm like, I'm going to sleep better tonight, right? Like it's not going to cost me as much. So
no.
there's lots of ideas that I think everybody can live this more Solarpunk life. And I hope people explore this mentality and this new direction.
Okay, I spoke too soon. There a whole bunch of questions that pop up.
Awesome.
So let's start with the first one. Any thoughts on 3D printing?
So I love 3D printing. I don't personally do it, but like I feel like every one of my friends are doing this. Like repairs around the house, like that's decentralization right there, right? Is if you're avoiding purchasing something from Amazon that's funding some dude's rocket to space, right? Like I think like you're benefiting yourself. I don't know if that ROI is there yet. Like, can you make enough widgets to offset what it would cost? But the idea of like even having organic printing of things or circuit, PCB circuit boards where we can prototype things. I think the technology is emerging where it's going to be some really incredible stuff, right? Now, I even think beyond that of like, what happens if we start downloading like sequences of DNA and we're starting to make, life forms? Like life can get really weird, like in a Black Mirror fashion, like super quick, right? And I just hope that we, as a society, navigate that smoothly. So from basic 3D printing over to this like sci-fi potential reality, right? But I think it's a positive direction.
Yeah. Okay. I think two more that were kind of related. So, do you think you should have a battery at your house that will store power for your whole house? And the other one was, did you graph your power usage?
Yeah. So I almost want to like I think I'm too small on everybody's screen to like show you. So I'm gonna try. So right there's like a graphics of today. Like the yellow is the solar power in, and the green is my power out. So today, luckily, it was sunny. But I'm also in Wisconsin, and there's like snow on some of the solar panels as well. So it's a rough day. But yeah, everything's graphed. Like I'm manipulating the data like all sorts of different directions. So I don't personally have a battery connected to I have 30 panels on my roof. I do not have a battery. And the reason for that is I'm in a small village that is like grandfathered into like old mentalities where they buy my power for retail price and then sell it back to me for retail price, as opposed to some other places where they'll buy it from you at wholesale. So they'll buy it for you from 4 cents, but then when you need power at nighttime, they're charging you 14 cents, right?
Right.
So luckily I'm in an area where I can use the grid as my battery. The negative to that is when the grid goes down, I still go down.
Yeah.
So I do have a Jackery, which is like a bunch of 1865 batteries in series that lets me tap into this portable battery that I use for like camping. And then I have Starlink. So like if everything goes down, I can still get some satellite internet. That's what's most important to me. So prioritize.
Yes. Your fridge won't work, but at least you can connect to the internet.
Yeah, if I get to the internet, like I can at least find out what's going on, right? Like, and for the ham radio licensed people out there, like they're like, I'm gonna know what's going on, right? Like, but yeah, I like, world news, right? So
yeah,
Appreciate it.
absolutely. Okay, next question I've got is, what is your opinion on the next generation of nuclear power generation?
So that one's like a loaded question. Like society, it's a complicated answer, right? And I have this fight with or this debate with multiple people in my family and friends and stuff like that. Humanity does not have a good long-term track record, which concerns me. But do the negatives outweigh the benefits? If we create modern nuclear power plants and we shut down coal plants, that makes a lot of sense. And like the reason why this question is being asked is because it's very controversial, right? Like, well, now what happens if you have a 1 in 1,000 chances of a meltdown? Yeah, like, so I'm gonna answer you honestly. I am not educated enough to give you an accurate answer. I'm leaning towards it's better for society, but what ultimately needs to happen is we put a lot of research and money into finding better solutions, because ultimately all our lives depend on power itself. So I'm going to plead ignorance here.
I like that. I like that answer. It's a good one. Yeah.